President Ibrahim Traoré was reviewing national security protocols in the capital when his trusted advisor called with news that shattered his focus. His sister, Layla Traoré, had been kidnapped. Her voice was shaky, almost broken as she relayed the message. Layla wasn't just a sister to him. She was a cultural icon and humanitarian figure known across the nation. The weight of the situation crashed over him like a tidal wave. This wasn't just a family emergency. It was a national crisis. The implications were staggering. He summoned all top intelligence and defense officials into an emergency session. The silence in the room was heavy, but Ibrahim's face was fire and steel. He knew this act was more than personal, it was strategic. It was a blow to his leadership and a direct threat to national stability. He vowed right then that he would recover Layla, no matter the cost, no matter the risk, even if it meant walking into fire himself. Details emerged quickly. Layla had been en route to a remote village to attend a community event when her convoy was ambushed. The attackers, masked and unnervingly calm, intercepted the vehicle and disabled the security team. Without firing a single shot, Layla was forced into a black SUV and disappeared into the countryside. The swiftness of the operation was chilling. No one even had time to react. When Ibrahim reviewed the CCTV footage, he was stunned by the precision and professionalism of the kidnappers. It wasn't a random act of violence, it was a statement. Their movements, their silence, and their organization screamed of military-level coordination. Ibrahim felt a deep certainty take root in him. This wasn't just about Layla. This was about undermining him, shaking the pillars of trust his leadership had built. And if that was their goal, he swore he'd make them regret it. As soon as the abduction hit national headlines, public outcry erupted. Social media flooded with calls for immediate action. Protests broke out near government buildings as civilians demanded answers and accountability. People were terrified, and rightly so. If the president's own sister could be taken in broad daylight, was anyone safe? Ibrahim stepped forward with urgency, addressing the nation in a somber, televised statement. His voice was steady, but his words carried the fury of a brother and the resolve of a leader. He promised the public that Layla would be rescued at any cost. Behind the scenes, elite forces were mobilized. The nation went into lockdown, airports were restricted, borders sealed, surveillance increased. All intelligence departments were ordered to provide actionable leads within 24 hours. Ibrahim knew time wasn't on their side. Every minute lost was a minute Layla could be in greater danger. What followed was a string of intense investigations. Then came the breakthrough. An intercepted phone call caught the voice of a man issuing threats. The call was traced to a burner phone. If the president doesn't fulfill his old promises, the man said coldly, he'll never see his sister again. The words burned into Ibrahim's mind. He replayed them over and over. Old promises, which ones? He had many enemies, but only a few knew how to strike this precisely. Suspicion quickly turned toward Abdul Ware, a disgraced political rival imprisoned months ago for conspiracy. The tactics, the vendetta, it all pointed in his direction. But how could someone behind bars orchestrate such a calculated attack? Ibrahim requested all intelligence files related to Ware and began digging. What he found sent chills down his spine. Ware may have been locked up, but his network was very much alive. A location ping placed the kidnapper's vehicle heading toward a remote border region known for insurgent activity. The area, filled with abandoned mines and uncharted tunnels, had long been used by rebel groups as hideouts. Ibrahim's advisors strongly opposed his personal involvement, but he dismissed their concerns. He declared, "When my sister's life is at stake, I am not a president. I am her brother." He handpicked a special unit and left under deep cover. They traveled under darkness, cutting through rough jungle and avoiding detection. The journey was brutal. 6 hours of silence, sweat, and survival instincts. Yet Ibrahim was calm. His mind wandered to memories of Layla, her laughter, her courage, the way she stood up to injustice, even as a child. Each step brought him closer to her and deepened his conviction. He wasn't just on a rescue mission. He was defending the very soul of his family. When they arrived near the location, their trackers found signs of recent activity. The tunnel entrances showed fresh footprints. Old doors had been rebolted. Electrical wiring suggested power had been restored deep underground. Ibrahim ordered his team to split. One group stayed outside to seal exits. The other, including himself, prepared to descend. The air was thick with dust and silence. Each footstep echoed like a drumbeat in the pitch-black corridors. The walls were damp. The darkness swallowed light. Yet no one flinched. Ibrahim led from the front, weapon in hand, eyes scanning every shadow. After almost an hour of silent movement, they heard something muffled cries. They stopped. The sound was faint but clear. Someone was alive inside. Every heartbeat grew. Louder. They had found something. Or someone. They traced the noise to a heavy steel door bolted from the outside. Ibrahim gave the signal. Two soldiers quietly took positions. On his mark, they pushed the door open. A sudden explosion of gunfire filled the tunnel. The kidnappers were waiting. One soldier was hit in the shoulder. Ibrahim immediately returned fire as his team surged forward. The gunfight was intense. The kidnappers had fortified their position, using debris and crates for cover. But Ibrahim's men were better trained. Within 15 minutes, the skirmish was over. 3 assailants dead. 2 captured. The rest fled deeper into the tunnel. Ibrahim didn't chase. Instead, he moved toward the back of the room, where he saw her Layla, tied to a chair, bruised, but awake, her eyes locked with his. They filled with tears, and so did his. He ran to her, dropping his weapon, and embraced her. They had no time to waste. The team carried Layla out through the tunnels, alert for possible counterattacks. A helicopter waited miles away at a hidden clearing. Ibrahim held his sister's hand the entire way. She was weak, but conscious, whispering that she knew he'd come. As the chopper lifted off, Ibrahim looked down at the jungle disappearing beneath. Them, he'd kept his promise. Within hours, they landed in the capital, where doctors rushed Layla into emergency care. News broke almost instantly. The president had personally led the rescue mission. The nation exploded in joy. Crowds gathered, chanting his name. Social media flooded with tributes. Even his harshest critics stood in admiration. Hashtags like #HeroPresident and #LAILA rescued soared to the top. It was a moment that reminded the country that its leader didn't just govern from a palace he fought in the trenches the following day. Ibrahim stood before Parliament and addressed the nation with quiet dignity. This victory, he said, belongs to every citizen who stands up for family, justice, and courage. The chamber roared in applause. He went on to announce major reforms in national security. More funding, better coordination, stronger intelligence frameworks. He made it clear this would never happen again. He would not let another citizen feel unsafe in their homeland. Behind closed doors, he ordered a full sweep of Abdulware's network. Prisons where up searched. He himself was interrogated for days. Eventually, he cracked. It was his plan. He'd orchestrated it from inside prison, through hidden contacts and encrypted messages. Ibrahim felt a cold fury. It was never just politics. It was personal for them too. Special forces launched coordinated raids across the country, arresting over 24 suspects tied to Ware's underground network. Caches of weapons, forged documents, and digital communications were uncovered confirming that the group had planned the kidnapping for months. Ibrahim oversaw each operation personally, sleeping little and demanding hourly updates. Allah, though still recovering, insisted on being briefed as well. Her resolve remained unshaken. They didn't break me, she told her doctors, and they won't break my country either. Her resilience inspired thousands. Schools displayed her portraits. Activists quoted her in speeches. Layla became more than a survivor. She became a national symbol of defiance. Ibrahim, meanwhile, was no longer seen only as a head of state. He was a warrior, a brother, a protector who put everything on the line. His people loved him more fiercely than ever before. A month later, Layla appeared publicly for the first time at a cultural summit in the capital. Cameras flashed as she stepped onto the stage in a modest dress, her eyes holding quiet strength. When she spoke, the room fell silent. "They took me hoping to break a spirit," she said, "but they only awakened a nation." The hall erupted in applause. Her voice, calm and clear, recounted moments of fear during captivity and how memories of her brother's courage kept her sane. She shared how she replayed his childhood words in her mind. "We never run, and we never bow." Across the country, people wept watching her speech on television. It was more than just a return, it was a rebirth. Trauma had scarred her. Yes, but it had also elevated her spirit to something indestructible. Even school children began writing essays titled, "Why Layla is My Hero." Ibrahim listened to her speech from his office, tears quietly tracing down his face. He thought of how close he had come to losing her. That fear still visited him in dreams, but seeing her strong, proud, and unbroken gave him peace. That night, he stood on the balcony of the presidential palace and watched fireworks crack through the sky. The people were celebrating not just her return, but the strength they saw in themselves reflected through the Traore family. His advisors urged him to take a rest, maybe even a vacation, but he refused. "Not yet," he said. "We still have enemies in the dark." He wasn't just referring to Ware's allies. He meant every force that tried to silence freedom, terrorize families, or twist politics into weapons. Ibrahim had tasted the edge of chaos, and he would never let it near his people again. Behind the scenes, a transformation was underway. New legislation passed quickly, empowering security agencies to work closer together under one command: surveillance. Systems were upgraded, and border protections were doubled. Ibrahim knew that strength without justice was dangerous, so he also pushed for transparency. Independent oversight bodies were formed to monitor state action. Civil liberties were preserved, even as safety expanded. This balance made him a rare kind of leader, feared by enemies, loved by the people, and respected by global allies. Countries sent delegations to learn from his crisis management. News outlets across continents aired special reports titled, "The Traore Doctrine," out. And through it all, Ibrahim remained grounded. He still walked the same paths in his neighborhood when possible. He still ate street food when security allowed. But his presence now drew tears. It's not just handshakes. As peace began to settle again over the country, whispers of revenge died out. People no longer wanted blood, they wanted unity. Layla launched a new foundation focused on trauma healing and youth empowerment. She visited conflict zones, met with families, and told her story not as a victim, but as proof that even the darkest tunnels had exits. Her words moved people who had long given up hope. Her courage reignited civil participation. Voter registration skyrocketed. Volunteerism surged. The nation wasn't just recovering, it was rising. Ibrahim often joined her quietly at events, staying in the background, letting her light shine. He had always been the protector. He was also the proud witness to a rebirth he never thought he'd see. Their bond, unshakable before, had become the core of national morale. International awards began pouring in. Layla was honored by the United Nations for bravery in the face of terror. Ibrahim received multiple peace and leadership recognitions, but he accepted them not as achievements, rather as reminders of what was nearly lost. "Titles mean nothing," he told a global audience. "My sister's voice, that's my reward." The crowd gave him a standing ovation. In private, Layla teased him about being too humble, but Ibrahim simply smiled. He knew power was a burden, not a trophy. Her father used to say, "A true leader doesn't shine brighter than his people. He lights their path." Now, Ibrahim truly understood what that meant. So did millions watching him. In a time when leadership often meant distance, Ibrahim had walked into the fire. He had come back with his heart intact. Months passed. Scars of that day remained emotional wounds, national tensions. Security drills, but the pain had matured into something more profound. Resolve. Schools taught Layla's story as part of their curriculum. Documentaries aired her interview across networks. The once fractured parts of society found a common thread in her survival. Ibrahim instituted National Remembrance Day for victims of political violence, turning tragedy into tradition. Churches, mosques, and temples all rang bells in her honor. Even hardened cynics had to admit the Traore siblings had changed the nation's story. No longer did it read like another tale of corruption and power games now. It sang of love, unity, and undying courage. Ibrahim knew history would remember this not as a crisis, but as a turning point. A new chapter had begun, and it carried the names of those who refused to give up. One late evening, Ibrahim and Layla sat together on the same palace balcony where he once wept alone. They didn't speak much, words weren't necessary. The quiet hum of the city below spoke volumes. Layla leaned her head on his shoulder, and he wrapped an arm around her. "Do you ever think about what could have happened?" she asked softly. He nodded but said nothing. A cool breeze passed through them. She smiled faintly. "Well, thank you for not letting it happen." He kissed her forehead gently. "I'd do it all again," he said in a heartbeat. They watched the stars in silence, two souls who had been to the edge and come back stronger. That night, the sky didn't look as dark. It looked brave, just like them. The people never forgot. Not the terror, not the courage, and certainly not the rescue. For generations to come, children would learn about how President Ibrahim Traoré walked through shadows to save his sister. They'd speak of the bond between Layla and Ibrahim as a symbol of hope. And most importantly, they would remember that no matter how powerful the enemy, love backed by action can break chains, defy bullets, and rebuild nations. The country stood taller now, more united than ever, because in its darkest moment, its leader didn't run. He didn't hide. He fought not just as a president, but as a brother. And in doing so, he showed the world what real leadership looks like when it's born, not from ambition, but from heart.